the Mangalacharana prayers before starting the Gita. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandegam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sagagana Raghunatanvitam Tam Sajivam साद्वैतम सावधूतम परिजन सहितम कृष्ण चैतन्य देवम श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान सगगणा ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितम च हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानु सुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So welcome to our weekly study of Bhagavad Gita. So we are continuing on the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Last week we started the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita, and the second chapter of Gita contains few sections. Last week we were covering the first section. First section is verses 2.1 to 2.10. Arjuna's surrender to Krishna. I'm just opening up the guide. Just 1 second. Oh, sorry. So this second chapter contains 5 sections. Section 1 is verses 2.1 to 2.10. Arjuna's further doubts and surrender to Krishna. And that's what we had seen last week. Arjuna's further reason for not fighting he gives. And he is not able to decide whether to fight or not to fight. But him being a great devotee, immediately surrenders to Krishna. Krishna, I'm a soul surrender unto you. 2.5, Krishna was telling. Arjuna was telling. Krishna, I am a soul surrender unto you. Please accept me as your disciple. Please instruct me what is ultimately good for me. And that's the turning point in Bhagavad Gita. The relationship changes from friendly one to guru disciple. And the second section is 2.11 to 2.13. Arjuna, Krishna is going to start speaking now. And he is giving Atma Jnana, knowledge of the self. And then he is giving that the science of the soul, how we are not this body, we are spirit soul. and the nature of the soul he describes. And then he says that the soul is eternal and body can never be saved. Hence, please do not give up your prescribed duty of a Kshatriya, stand up and fight. So in section 3, 2.31 to 38, he's going to talk about Karma Kanda, right? The duty, when you do the prescribed duty, Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, right? You can enjoy the results, right? If you think that you are not able to enjoy the kingdom, but he's saying by doing duty, you can actually enjoy, either by winning or losing, doesn't matter. And then the next section is a very important section. In section 4, Krishna talks about Buddhi Yoga or Nishkama Karma Yoga. And then he again is telling stand up and fight. Section 5 is 2.54 to 72. That is Sthita Prajna, remaining in Samadhi and standing up and doing your duty in Krishna consciousness. Stand up and fight. Right? So these are the 5 sections. Last week we saw the section 1 verses 2.1 to 2.8. So 2.8 is the when Arjuna stops, gives that instruction, gives that reasoning that why he is not able to fight, and then is says that I am not able to fight. So now Sanjaya is going to speak. Sanjaya is going to describe further what happened. Verse 9. We are going to cover 9 and 10 from this section. Then we will continue the section 2 today. Sanjaya uvacha evam uktva hrishikesham gudakesha parantapa nayotsa idi govindam uktva tushnim babuvaha. Sanjaya said, having spoken thus, Arjuna, chastiser of enemies, told Krishna, Govinda, I shall not fight, and fell silent. He is telling that in the previous verses that it's better to get killed than kill all these people. Even a kingdom unrivaled to the 14 worlds is given, I will not be able to do this fighting. That's the reason he gives, because he is not able to decide. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada ki jai. Dhritarashtra must have been very glad to understand that Arjuna was not going to fight and was instead leaving the battlefield for begging profession. But Sanjaya disappointed him again in relating that Arjuna was competent to kill his enemies, Parantapa. Right here, Arjuna's name is called as Parantapa. Parantapa means one who conquers the enemy, right? Chastiser of enemies. Although Arjuna was for time being overwhelmed with false grief due to family affection, he surrendered unto Krishna, the supreme spiritual master, as a disciple. This indicated that he would soon be free from false lamentation resulting from family affection and would be enlightened with perfect knowledge of self-realization or Krishna consciousness, and would then surely fight. Thus, Dhritarashtra joy would be frustrated, since Arjuna would be enlightened by Krishna and would fight to the end. So here, Sanjaya is relating to Dhritarashtra that Arjuna had given up fighting, and then he said, I cannot fight Govinda, and then he fell silent. But here, Prabhupada is telling in the purport, even though Sanjaya might be happy to know that Arjuna is not going to fight, he is going to give up. So without fighting, he is going to keep the entire kingdom. But here the choice of word used by Sanjaya is Parantapa. Parantapa means chastiser of enemies. That's how Prabhupada translates. Don't think that Arjuna is giving up fighting because he is not able to fight. Because of this affection only, he is not able to fight. But as Prabhupada indicates, that is going to clarify it. That false lamentation is going to go away when Krishna enlightens him with perfect knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, the self-realization. So next verse 2.10. Tam uvacha Krishikesha Pragashan iva Bharata Senayor Ubayor Madhye Vishidantam Idam Vachaha. O descendant of Bharata, at the time Krishna, smiling in the midst of both armies, spoke the following words to the grief-stricken Arjuna. Purport. The talk was going on between intimate friends, namely Hrishikesha and Gudakesha, right? Hrishikesha means controller of the sense, the master of senses, the master of everyone's senses. Gudakesha means one who conquered ignorance or sleep. As friends, both of them were on the same level, but one of them voluntarily became a student of the other. Krishna was smiling because a friend had chosen to become a disciple. As Lord of all, he is always in the superior position as the master of everyone. And yet, the Lord agrees to be friend, a son or a lover for a devotee who wants him in such a role. But when he was accepted as the master, he at once assumed the role and talked with the disciple like the master with gravity, as it is required. It appears that the talk between master and the disciple was openly exchanged in the presence of both armies, so that all were benefited. So the talks of Bhagavad Gita are not for any particular person, society, or community, but they are for all. And friends or enemies are equally entitled to hear them. So here, Prabhupada in this purport giving a very good insight, that how the conversation between guru and disciple is always a serious one. It is not, with friends could be joking and casual, but a guru and disciple is never, in a casual way. One of the meaning of the word guru, right? The modern translation of the word guru is actually people translate as teacher, you know, or expert or something like that. But actually, there is no equivalent word in English for the word guru. Guru has many meaning. The one who wishes ultimately well for him and enlightens him with the perfect knowledge, right? He seeks well for that person. Guru is also a person not only teaches, he sets an example for others to follow. It is not just the words he speaks, his actions also has to be in line with the words, right? So the guru word is also meaning, guru means heavy, the word guru also means heavy, the one who gives heavy knowledge, one who removes the misconception that we are this body, we are spirit, soul. That's the beginning of all spiritual knowledge, right? And then Prabhupada here further says that this conversation happening between guru and disciple was happening it was openly exchanged in the presence of both the armies, right? And everybody was hearing. It is not that no one was hearing. Everybody was hearing. But the conversation going on between Arjuna and Krishna, right? So here Prabhupada is saying this knowledge of Gita is not for one particular person or society or community. It is meant for all, right? Especially all human beings who has the ability to discriminate between right and wrong, good and bad. Then they can, when they listen to the Bhagavad Gita with an open mind, they can get benefited, right? There is no disqualification, whether you are friend or enemy, right? Doesn't matter. They are equally entitled to hear them. The only thing is that they have to hear with an open mind. They have to hear with that understanding that Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. He is giving this ultimate knowledge. When we hear with that open mind, when we hear with that mood that I am here to learn something from Krishna, this knowledge is beneficial. So now Krishna is going to start speaking the philosophy of Gita, because Arjuna surrendered to Krishna, accepted him as Guru, right? Then Krishna is going to instruct him in that capacity as master, right? Or Guru. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Asocyan Anavashochatvam Pragyavadamscha Bhashashe Gadasun Akatum Sumcha Nanu Chochanti Panditaha. Translation: the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, while speaking learned words, right? You are mourning for what is not worthy of grief. Those who are wise lament neither for the living nor for the dead. So here the word, right, Pandita, right? Pandita means learned, right? Arjuna gave all the arguments based on scripture only. Why you should not fight this war? Because of compassion, I should not fight, right? Even if I fight, I will not be able to enjoy the loss of enjoyment, fear of sinful reaction, destruction of family decision, family tradition. All this valid reason he gives not to fight the war. But Krishna does not, give any philosophy until Arjuna surrenders to Krishna as a disciple. Disciple, the word disciple means to be disciplined. So first thing Krishna is doing is disciplining Arjuna. You spoke like a Pandita, but you are not Pandita. You spoke like one. You are lamenting for what which is not worthy of grief. Right? The wise neither lament for the living nor for the dead. Right? So we will read the purport. Lord at once took the position of the teacher and chastised the student, calling him indirectly a fool. The Lord said, "You are talking like a learned man, but you do not know that one who is learned, one who knows that what is body and what is soul, does not lament for any stage of the body, neither in the living nor in the dead condition." As explained in later chapters, it will be clear that knowledge means to know matter and spirit and the controller of both. Arjuna argued that religious principles should be given more importance than politics or sociology, but he did not know that knowledge of matter, soul, and the supreme is even more important than religious formularies. So here, this is a very, very important point. Arjuna gave the argument on the basis of scriptures and religiosity only, right? But here Prabhupada is telling there is something more important than religious formularies. That is knowledge of the matter, knowledge of the soul, and the controller of both. Right? This is the ultimate knowledge which can benefit the living entity. Right? And because he was lacking in that knowledge, he should have not posed himself as a very learned man. As he did not happen to be very learned man, he was consequently lamenting for something which was unworthy of lamentation. The body is born and is destined to be vanquished today or tomorrow. Therefore, the body is not as important as the soul. One who knows this is actually learned, and for him, there is no cause for lamentation, regardless of the condition of the material body. So this is the beginning of all spiritual knowledge. This foundation that we are not this body, we are all eternal spirit soul. This is the beginning of all spiritual knowledge. Science through which we are trying to understand so many things which is happening around us in this world. The most important question, the most ultimate unanswered question in science today is, who am I? Right? What is life? That is the question still not answered completely in Gita and in the modern science. Right? After spending millions and millions of dollars, billions of dollars of doing so much of research, still they cannot understand the cause of life. What causes the cause of life? But according to spirituality, life does not come from matter. Life comes from life. The source of life is not matter, it is spirit. The moment we can understand this, right, that is the conclusion of all the material knowledge. The conclusion of all the material knowledge is the beginning of spiritual knowledge. Right? Where the material science ends, the spiritual science begins. Actually, there is no contradiction between material science and spiritual science. Material science is trying to understand everything around us, what is happening, how it is happening, right? But ultimately, still, through material science, we are not able to answer what is the cause of life, because through any amount of research, any amount of permutation and combination using matter, we cannot produce life simply from matter, right? By this logic of exhaustion, one can come to a conclusion that matter is not the cause of life, something other than matter is the cause of life, right? So when somebody understands that something other than matter is the cause of life, one can call it as antimatter or spirit. That is the beginning of spiritual life, where Material life ends, spiritual life begins. Actually, there is no contradiction. It's a continuum. Here Prabhupada is telling the body is born and is destined to be vanquished today or tomorrow. Therefore, the body is not as important as the soul, right? It is not that body is, we ignore the body, but one should know that body is not as important as the soul. Body is important. We should take care of it. But that doesn't mean that we should give priority to the body than the soul. There is the horse and the cart. We should always horse lead the cart, not the other way. Similarly, the body and soul is there. Soul is more important than the body. There is car and the driver, right? Which is more important? The driver is more important than the car, right? Car is important to travel, but not at the cost of the driver, right? If the driver is not there, car is useless. Similarly, the soul leaves the body, the dead body is useless, right? One has to, cremate, or one has to bury, or one has to dispose. The moment soul leaves the body is dead. As long as the soul is present, the body is animating. The moment soul leaves the body is dead, it's inanimate, and it becomes useless, it starts degrading, right? It starts decomposing. So one should understand that, right? One who knows this, right, that soul is more important than the body is actually learned. For him, there is no cause for lamentation regardless of the condition of the material body. So Krishna chastises Arjuna, you spoke like a pandita, but you are not, you are a fool, because you are lamenting for the body which is not going to last long. The wise people neither lament for the living nor for the dead, because they know that body is going to be eventually destroyed. They know that the soul is eternal, right? So next, right, the first philosophical point Krishna makes here in this verse. This is a very important verse. This is the key first philosophical point Krishna makes in Bhagavad Gita. So if possible, you can now try to memorize this shloka. It's a very important shloka. Let me recite a couple of times so that you can, understand the pronunciation and try to memorize it. Natvevagam jatunasam natvam neme janati paha nachevana bhavishyamaga sarve vayam athap param. Natvevagam jatunasam natvam neme janati paha nachevana bhavishyamaga sarve vayam athap param. Natvevagam jatunasam natvam neme janati paha nachevana bhavishyamaga sarve vayam athap param. Translation: never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all the kings, nor in future shall any of us cease to be. Purport: in the Vedas, in the Katha Upanishad, as well as in the Svetashvatara Upanishad, it is said that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is maintainer of innumerable living entities in terms of their different situations according to individual work and reaction to work. That Supreme Personality of Godhead is also by his plenary portions alive in the heart of every living entity. Only saintly persons who can see within and without the same Supreme Lord can actually attain to perfect and eternal peace. Right? This verse from Katha Upanishad. Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bhagunam yo vidadati kamam tam atmastam ye anupashyanti dhiras tesham shanti shashvati netaresham. Right? The same Vedic truth given to Arjuna is given to all persons in the world who pose themselves as very learned, but factually have but a poor fund of knowledge. The Lord says clearly that he himself, Arjuna, and all the kings who are assembled on the battlefield are eternally living individual beings, and that the Lord is eternally the maintainer of the living entities both in their conditioned and in their liberated situations. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is the supreme individual person, and Arjuna, the Lord's eternal associate, and all the kings assembled there are individual eternal persons. It is not that they did not exist as individuals in the past, and it is not that they will remain eternal persons. Their individuality existed in the past, and their individuality will continue in the future without interruption. Therefore, there is no cause for lamentation for anyone. Right? This is a very, very important point. Krishna is telling that we all existed in the past as individuals, you, me, and all these kings. And we are existing now. In future also we will exist as individuals. Right? That means two important points, right, from this sloka of Krishna speaks. One, that we are all not this body, we are all eternal. Second, we are all eternal individual beings. Our individuality is never lost. In the past, we are individuals. In the present, we are individuals. In future also, we will remain as individuals, right? So Prabhupada is going to talk about a very important philosophical point, right, about this Mayavada theory. Mayavada theory is that, right, out of ignorance, we are all thinking that we are all different. When the covering of Maya or illusion is removed, we will all merge into one being, right? So Prabhupada is saying that that philosophy is refuted by Krishna, saying that individuality is eternal, right? I'm reading that paragraph, right? The Mayavada theory that after liberation, the individual soul, by the covering of Maya or illusion, will merge into impersonal Brahman and lose its individual existence is not supported here in by Lord Krishna, the supreme authority, right? Nor is the theory that we only think of individuality in the conditioned state supported herein. Krishna clearly says herein that in the future also the individuality of the Lord and others, as it is confirmed in the Upanishad, will continue eternally. This statement of Krishna is authoritative because Krishna cannot be subject to illusion. If individuality were not a fact, then Krishna would not have stressed it so much, even for the future. The Mayavadi may argue that the individuality spoken of by Krishna is not spiritual but material. Even accepting the argument that individuality is material, then how can one distinguish Krishna's individuality? Krishna affirms his individuality in the past and confirms his individuality in the future also. He has confirmed his individuality in many ways, and impersonal Brahman has been declared to subordinate to him. In the later chapters, right, Krishna very clearly established how the impersonal Brahman is nothing but, the effulgence coming out of his body. In the 7th chapter, Krishna is going to establish that. So Krishna has maintained spiritual individuality all along. If he is accepted as an ordinary conditioned soul in individual consciousness, then his Bhagavad Gita has no value as authoritative scripture. A common man with all the 4 defects of human frailty is unable to teach that which is worth hearing. The Gita is above such literature. No mundane book compares with Bhagavad Gita. When one accepts Krishna as ordinary man, the Gita loses all importance. The Mayavadis argue that the plurality mentioned in this verse is conventional and that it refers to the body. But previous to this verse, such a bodily conception is already condemned. After condemning the bodily conception of living entities, how was it possible for Krishna to place a conventional proposition on the body again? Therefore, individuality is maintained on the spiritual grounds and is thus confirmed by great acharyas like Sri Ramanuja and others. It is clearly mentioned in many places in Gita that this spiritual individuality is understood by bona fide access to, spiritual individuality is understood by those who are devotees of the Lord. Those who are envious of Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead have no bona fide access to the great literature. The non-devotees' approach to the teachings of Gita is something like that of a bee licking on a bottle of honey. One cannot have a taste of honey unless one opens the bottle. Similarly, the mysticism of the Bhagavad Gita can be understood only by devotees, and no one else can taste it, as it is stated in the 4th chapter of the book, right? In the later chapters, in the 4th chapter, Jnana Yoga, Krishna clearly establishes how this knowledge is coming in a disciplic succession. In the beginning, he spoke to sun god Vivashwan, and it was coming in a disciplic succession. Only a friendly person, one who is not envious of Krishna, right, can understand. Anusuyave means he is telling Arjuna, you are not envious of me. Hence, I am speaking this knowledge because you can understand, because you are not envious of me. Nor can the Gita be touched by persons who envy the very existence of the Lord. Therefore, the Mayavadi explanation of Gita is a most misleading presentation of the whole truth. Lord Chaitanya has forbidden us to read commentations made by the Mayavadis and wants that one who takes to such an understanding of the Mayavada philosophy loses all power to understand the real mystery of the Gita. If individuality refers to the empirical universe, then there is no need of teaching by the Lord. The plurality of the individual soul and the Lord is an eternal fact, and it is confirmed by the Vedas as mentioned above. Right? So here Krishna is telling we are all eternal spirit souls. I, Krishna, existed in the past, you, Arjuna, existed in the past, and all these kings all existed as individuals in the past. And we will all exist in future as well as individuals. Right? This statement, what Krishna is telling, this the same statement is mentioned in the Katha Upanishad and Svetasthara Upanishad. Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. Right? Prabhupada quotes that verse. That the Lord is the maintainer of all the eternals. There are so many eternals. Nityam. Nitya means eternal. The living entities are all eternals. We are all spirits. Of all the eternals, there is one supreme eternal who maintains all the other eternals. Right? That is Krishna, Bhagavan. Right? So they are all eternals in the past, in the present, in future. So the Vedic statements, Upanishads also confirm to the statement. So next verse, when Krishna speaks that we are all not this body, we are all eternal souls, immediately Arjuna may have the question in mind, then what is this body? Right? So before even ask that question, immediately Krishna understood what Arjuna is thinking. He speaks the next verse. We are all eternal spirit souls. In the previous verse he said, now he talks about the body, what the body is. Right? Deginosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tata dehantara praptir deras tatranam muhyati. This is also very, very important verse philosophically. This verses 2.12, 13 and 14. These three verses gives very three important philosophical points. These are the foundation for all spiritual life. So these three verses, if possible, we should try to memorize, because they give, memorizing means not just memorizing the shloka, we also should understand the meaning of the shloka, right? So let me recite the verse again. Deginosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tada tegandra praptir dhiras tatranam muhyati. Deginosmin yata dehe kaumaram yavvanam jara tata deghandra praptir dhiras tatranam muhyati. Right? So let me read the word by word meaning also. Deginaha, of the embodied, Ashmin, in this, Yata, as, Dege, in the body, Kaumaram, boyhood, Yavvanam, youth, Jara, old age, Tata, similarly, Degantara, of transference of the body, Praptihi, achievement, Dhiraha, the sober, Tatra, thereupon, Na, never, Muhyati, is deluded. Translation: as the embodied soul continuously passes in this body from boyhood to youth to old age, the soul similarly passes into another body at death. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. So in the previous verse, Krishna spoke, we are all eternal spirit souls. Immediately Arjuna might have the question, then what this body? Krishna is telling this body is a temporary thing. The embodied soul, right, is situated in the body. Right? The body is from boyhood to youth to old age. Constantly it is changing. The body is temporary. It is constantly going through the change. Right? the soul is constantly changing the body, right? At some point of time, right, at the time of death, it is going to give up altogether the body, and the soul is going to move on to another body. How continuously the soul is changing the body, at some point of death, it altogether changes the body to another body, right? A sober person is not bewildered by a change. There are two important points. One is that the body is a temporary one, is constantly goes through the change, right? The change cannot be stopped. And the soul is constantly changing the body. Because of the presence of the soul, the body is going through transformation, change. When the soul leaves, the body becomes useless, the soul will move on to another body. At that time, the body will disintegrate into primordial nature, right? The body is made up of these 5 Mahabhutas, Panchabhutas, right? Earth, water, fire, air, and space. Bhumi, Apo, Analo, Vayu, right? Come, right? These 5 elements. Bhumi, earth, right? Apo, water, Vayu, air, right? Analo, fire, right? And come, ether, space. These 5 elements are the one which the body is made up of. As long as the soul is present, the body is animating, the body is going through transformation. When the soul leaves the body is going to disintegrate into primordial elements back into earth, water, fire, air, and space, right? So a sober person is not bewildered when the soul moves on to another body at the time of death, right? Purport. Since every living entity is an individual soul, each is changing his body every moment, manifesting sometimes as a child, sometimes as a youth, and sometimes as an old man. Yet the same spirit soul is there and does not undergo any change. This individual soul finally changes the body at death and transmigrates to another body. And since it is sure to have another body in the next birth, either material or spiritual, there was no cause for lamentation by Arjuna on the account of death, neither for Bhishma nor for Drona, for whom he was so much concerned. Rather, he should rejoice for their changing bodies from old one to new ones, thereby rejuvenating their energy. Such changes of body account for varieties of enjoyment or suffering according to one's work in life. So Bhishma and Drona, being noble souls, were surely going to have spiritual bodies in the next life, or at least life in heavenly bodies for superior enjoyment of material existence. So in either case, there was no cause of lamentation. So here Prabhupada is telling the body is constantly going through the change from boyhood to youth to old age. Similarly, at the time of death, the soul is going to move on to another body. Here Arjuna should not lament because Bhishma and Drona, they are already situated in a old body. Anyway, they have to give up the old body for a younger one or newer one, right? Hence, he should not lament. Arjuna, the Drona and Bhishma, them being great noble souls, either they will get a spiritual body or they will get a body in a heavenly planet through which they can have a superior enjoyment. In either case, there is no cause for lamentation. He is so worried about Drona and Bhishma, he should not be worried. That's the point Prabhupada is making here. Any man who has perfect knowledge of constitution of the individual soul, the super soul and nature, both material and spiritual, is called a dhira or a most sober person. Such a man is never deluded by the changes of bodies. Here Prabhupada is calling dhira means a sober person. Sober person means he does not get disturbed by the external changes. Who is a sober person? One who has perfect knowledge of the constitution of the individual soul, the super soul, and the material nature. Right? The individual soul Jivatma, the super soul Paramatma, and material nature Prakriti. One who has proper understanding. Nature, again the nature, right? There are two things, right? Spiritual and material nature. One who understands both spiritual nature and material nature, the soul and the super soul, right? He is called a dhira. Such a man is never deluded by the changes of bodies. The Mayavadi theory of oneness of the spirit soul cannot be entertained on the ground that spirit soul cannot be cut into pieces as fragmental portion. Such cutting into different individual souls would make the supreme cleavable or changeable against the principle of the supreme souls being unchangeable. As confirmed in Gita, the fragmental portion of the supreme exists eternally, sanatana, and are called kshara. That is, they have a tendency to fall down into the material nature. These fragmental portions are eternally so, and even after liberation, the individual soul remains the same fragmental. But once liberated, he lives an eternal life in bliss and knowledge with the personality of Godhead. The theory of reflection can be applied to the super soul, who is present in each and every individual body and is known as Paramatma. He is different from the individual living entity. When the sky is reflected in water, the reflections represent both the sun and the moon and the stars also. The stars can be compared to the living entities and the sun or the moon to the Supreme Lord. The individual fragmental spirit soul is represented by Arjuna. The Supreme Soul is the personality of Godhead Sri Krishna. They are not on the same level, as it will be apparent in the beginning of the 4th chapter. If Arjuna is on the same level with Krishna and Krishna is not superior to Arjuna, then the relationship of instructor and instructed becomes meaningless. If both of them are deluded by illusory energy Maya, then there is no need of one being the instructor and the other being instructed. Such instruction would be useless because in the clutches of Maya, no one can be authoritative instructor. Under the circumstances, it is admitted that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord, superior in position to the living entity, Arjuna, who is forgetful soul, deluded by Maya. This is a very, very important point Prabhupada is making. If Krishna and Arjuna, both of them are at same level, both of them are covered by Maya, the Gita does not have any significance. Right? Because if Arjuna is also conditioned living entity, Krishna is also a conditioned living entity, how can he give perfect knowledge? If we are all one, if Krishna is realized soul, Arjuna is not realized soul. If Krishna is already realized, he already lost his individuality. There is no need to speak. If he is able to speak, he has individuality. Because he is having individuality, if he is conditioned, if the individuality is conditioned nature, then the knowledge he speaks is not relevant. So here, the important point Prabhupada is making here is that because Krishna is in the supreme position, Gita has relevance. He is not like us. Krishna gets never conditioned by the material nature. He never come under illusion, Maya. Right? In fact, he is the controller of the illusionary Maya. Whereas the living entity, them being, fragmental, they can get covered by Maya. Right? Krishna is representing the supreme Lord. Right? He is the supreme Lord. He never comes under illusion. Hence, he can give perfect knowledge. Hence, he can be an authoritative instructor. Whereas Arjuna, he is a living entity. He can come under forgetfulness, deluded by Maya. And hence, he needs this perfect knowledge from the perfect master. The next verse, as I said, this is also a very important verse, 2.14. Matra sparshastu kaunteya sidoshna shugudakadaha agama payino anityas tamshati dikshava bharata. Matra sparshastu kaunteya sidoshna shugudakadaha agama payino anityas tamshati dikshava bharata. Matra sparshastu kaunteya sidoshna shugudakadaha agama payino anityas tamshati dikshava bharata. Translation: O son of Kunti, the non-permanent appearance of happiness and distress and their disappearance in due course are like the appearance and disappearance of winter and summer seasons. They arise from sense perception. O son of Bharata, one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed. In the 2.12, Krishna said we are all eternal spirit souls. In 2.13, he said the body is temporary. Right? A sober person does not lament when the soul moves on from one temporary body to another body. Right? Here, Krishna is talking about duality. When the eternal spirit soul and the temporary material body is put together, what comes? The duality arises, incompatibility, right? They arise from sense perception, O Shayana of Bharata, and one must learn to tolerate them without being disturbed, right? Purport. In the proper discharge of duty, one has to learn to tolerate non-permanent appearances and disappearances of happiness and distress. According to Vedic injunction, one has to take his bath early in the morning, even during the month of Magha, January, February. In the very cold, it is very cold at that time. But in spite of that, a man who abides by the religious principles does not hesitate to take his bath. Similarly, a woman does not hesitate to cook in the kitchen in the months of May and June, the hottest part of the summer season. One has to execute his duty in spite of climatic inconveniences. Similarly, to fight is the religious principle of the Kshatriyas. And although one has to fight with some friends or relative, one should not deviate from his prescribed duty. One has to follow the prescribed rules and regulations of religious principles in order to rise up to the platform of knowledge. Because by knowledge and devotion, only can liberate himself from the clutches of Maya illusion. The two different names of address given to Arjuna are also significant. To address him as Kaunteya signifies his great blood relations from his mother's side, and to address him as Bharata signifies his greatness from his father's side. From both sides, he is supposed to have great heritage. A great heritage brings responsibility in the matter of proper discharge of duties. Therefore, he cannot avoid fighting. Here Prabhupada is telling that, right, how in summer and winter somebody does not give up their prescribed duties. A person, even a religious person, even in winter he takes bath in the morning to do his religious duties. Similarly, a woman, right, who's cooking in the kitchen, especially in India, right, in the during May, June, it's very hot. Just because kitchen is hot, she doesn't give up cooking. As her prescribed duty, she actually takes care of her family and nourishes them, right? So they don't look at the inconvenience of the climatic condition. They still discharge the duty. Similarly, as a Kshatriya, right, his duty, religious duty, is to fight for dharma, right? Fight for the dharma and establish dharma. Even if the other side, some friend or relative is going to stand up, even if he has to fight a friend or relative, still he has to discharge his prescribed duty as a Kshatriya. He should not deviate from his prescribed duty, right? So this is very important point. Just by doing the prescribed duty, one can be situated in knowledge, and by devotion, one can liberate himself from the clutches of Maya. If one gets disturbed in the situation, right, of happiness and suffering in this world, he will not be able to focus on the goal of life. If one gets elated by temporary happiness in this world, or one gets depressed by the sufferings of this world, he will not be able to focus on the goal of life. The goal of life is to get liberated from the conditioned state and go back into the spiritual world, our original nature. The spirit belongs to the spiritual world, right, not to the temporary material world. Because it is put in this temporary material world with the temporary material body, there is incompatibility, right? One has to tolerate these inconveniences and rise above the struggle and discharge his duty and situate himself in knowledge, and by devotion he can liberate. So here also Prabhupada is talking about two names given to Arjuna. One is Kaunteya, son of Kunti. Another is Bharata, the descendant of Bharata, right? The Bharata king who appeared in this lineage, right? The land, right, of Bharata. People generally think that the Bharata, right, refers to only to India. No, actually it refers to greater India. Once upon a time, the entire whole world was under one kingdom. The entire earth also is called Bharata Kanda. So he is actually descendant of King Bharata, right? He is coming from both the sides, from the father side and mother side. He is coming from a great lineage. Hence, he has a greater responsibility of discharging the duty. Hence, he cannot avoid fighting. So, these three important slokas gives the three important philosophical points. First is that soul is eternal. Second, the body is temporary. As long as the soul is present in the body, the body is changing. At some point of time, the soul altogether is going to change the body and move on to another body. A sober person is not disturbed by such a change. The third sloka, 2.14, Krishna says that one should, the appearance and disappearance of happiness and suffering is like appearance of summer and winter. One has to learn to tolerate because they arise due to sense perception, right? So these are the three important philosophical points Krishna makes. So we stop here and we will continue the further knowledge of Atma Jnana. Krishna is going to give the knowledge of the soul. This 2.14 we stop. We will continue from 15, right? Up to 30 is this second section. It may take a couple of more weeks to complete this section. At this point, any comments, questions?
Yeah, maybe. Hello, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes, Prashant. Yes.
Yeah. Maybe you can tell us something about the duality, which we spoke about several, I think, couple of months back. Like, and the pleasure, pain, all these dualities are supposed to be same, but on the other hand, Atma and Paramatma are different. There is duality, right? So,
yes, it's a very, very good question you are asking. Very good question. Please continue.
So that is the question, basically.
Okay. Yes. So the Vedic philosophy, right? There is Advaita, Dvaita. There are two types of philosophy. Advaita is the philosophy of oneness. Dvaita is philosophy of difference, right? So the scriptures, especially the Upanishad, there are some Upanishads are called, the philosophy which talks about oneness, Advaita scriptures. And there are certain Upanishads talks about duality, Dvaita scriptures. So one has to harmonize this both, right? So here, what the duality we are experiencing in this material world, when a soul is covered by a material body, when it is situated in the material world, in material consciousness, it is experiencing duality, so-called happiness and misery. They are all arising out of sense perception. What is that sense perception? When the soul misidentifies itself with the body, it thinks that I am this body. It experiences the pain and pleasure happening to the body through the mind. It identifies itself that it is happening to me. This is the misidentification of the body. Because of that, it is experiencing so-called happiness and suffering. This misidentification has to be given up, right? So this is what the duality of this world has to be given up. Now, the duality from the spiritual point of view, the Jivatma and Paramatma, right? So that needs to be given up. That is what, right? The Mayavadi, the impersonalists, they saying that also has to be given up. Ultimately, there is only Brahman. Brahman Satyam, Jagat Mithyam. Now, Prabhupada is telling that philosophy of everything is one is not existing in spirituality, in spiritual world. Eternally, the Jiva, Man, Paramatma, they are eternally separate only. Even though the source is originally Bhagavan, even for the Jivatma, right? Eternally, we are different too. Now, how do you harmonize the scriptures which takes the oneness part, and how do you harmonize the scriptures which talks about the different part? Now, the Acharyas explained the oneness is in quality. in terms of quality, the Jivatma and Paramatma, they have same quality. A drop of water from the ocean, the whole ocean, they have the same quality. But in terms of quantity, right, Jivatma and Paramatma, they are different. They are simultaneously one and different. And that is what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu established. Achintya Beda Abeda Tattva. Inconceivable, simultaneous oneness and different. You know, in one sense, the soul and super soul, Jivatma and Paramatma is one. In another sense, they are different. It is one in terms of quality, it is different in terms of quantity. This proper understanding, we can reconcile the difference in the scriptures, right? That way, this is the, because originally we are eternally two, right? That is what Madhvacharya's philosophy. When you look at Madhvacharya's posture, if you look at a picture of Madhvacharya, his hand, right, is raised like this with two fingers, right? Eternally two. Jivatma and Paramatma, they are eternally two different things, right? But there is also oneness aspect. That is what Shankaracharya focused on. Now Ramanujacharya talked about simultaneous oneness and difference, qualified oneness and difference, and Mahaprabhu spoke about inconceivable oneness and difference, right? They are one in quality and different in quantity. So this Dvaita, this duality and the duality of happiness and suffering, they are two different aspects. Does it make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
So it's a very good question. Thank you, Prashant Ji, for that question. So any other comments, questions at this point?
Thank you.
If not, now we will come to conclusion today, and then we will continue on this second section, verses 2.11 to 2.30, Atma Jnana, knowledge of the self. So by the way, these philosophical points, whatever we discussed, right, simultaneous, oneness and different, throughout Gita when we study, later chapters will all, come into, proper understanding, we will know. Krishna elaborates all these things very nicely.
So Madhvaji, so this is a major difference, Dvaita, Advaita and Visishta Advaita, right? So this
Yes.
is where the
There is like
interpretation of Gita is.
Advaita philosophy was spoken by Shankaracharya. Later, Ramanacharya came and spoke the philosophy of Vishishta Advaita, qualified oneness. Then later Madhvacharya came and spoke Dvaita, eternal difference. Now
So they are all
later Chaitanya Mahaprabhu came and harmonized all these philosophies and gave a unified philosophy of Achintya Beda Abeda. Simultaneous oneness and different.
I see.
So when you look through this lens of Achintya Beda Beda, then all the contradiction in the scriptures can be resolved. Then you will see that different scriptures are talking about the different aspects. There is no contradiction in the scriptures at all. Similarly, the Acharyas are also in different point in time, they spoke about the different aspects of the philosophy, because at that time that was the need. Next week, right, in the beginning, I know it's going to be 6:30, I will start with this again. Remind me, this is a very important thing. We need to understand why Shankaracharya spoke Advaita, why Ramanujacharya spoke Vishishta Advaita, and why Madhvacharya spoke Dvaita.
Right.
Next week we will start. Before going into the actual Gita slokas, we will talk about it. This is a very, very important point to understand the chronology of the philosophy spoken by the great acharyas, and how to understand by harmonizing them, how to understand and resolve all the contradictions within them, how to get that integrated view. And that is what the Vedic literature presents, an integrated view. They are all correct from different perspectives. Why they spoke, why they focused on those aspects. That's what we are going to see next week.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Katyayani Mataji, you made.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you, Prashant. Thank you.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. We'll see next week. We'll join next week. We'll continue. Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.